3 girls ran along a darkened street. All of them were dressed in black. The tallest girl, their leader, wore a plastic witch's hat that gleamed in the amber of the street lamp above. The second girl wore a pair of vampire's fangs that were starting to go lopsided. Bringing up the rear, the third girl wore a pair of bright red horns. Between them they carried several objects: a family-sized box of eggs, several spray cans of streamers, a battered box of chocolates. At the end of the street they stopped, opened the gate of the end house, ran into the front garden and up to the front door. They rang the bell. Silence followed. "They are in!" the lead girl cried. "I saw the curtain!" She turned, grinning, to her companions. "Go on, get 'em!" The girls began to pelt the house with eggs. Screaming, laughing, hooting, they watched as the front windows disappeared beneath a torrent of yolk. Then, as quickly as they had come, the 3 of them disappeared into the night. "How much have we got?" Tanya paused laughingly for breath, pushing the pointed hat back from her face. Carrie checked the pocket of the winter coat she had on, underneath her vampire's cloak. She quickly counted the handful of change. $4.50. "That's all?" Tanya pouted. "I knew they were tight round here." "We got these as well." Aisha straightened her horns. She held out the chocolate box. "Want one?" "I wouldn't." Carrie pointed at the box. "Haven't you noticed? Best before September 2022. "What?" Tanya cried. She checked for herself. "The miserable... Where'd we get them from? The close?" She checked the egg box she was still holding. "We'll do them on the way back." "It's starting to rain." Aisha looked upwards to an overcast sky. In spite of the damp and misty evening, someone was having fireworks. From time to time, the shriek of a rocket or the loud report of a banger broke the silence of the night. "Shouldn't we be getting back? Mum's going to wonder what's happened to us. My little sister's having a party. There's duck apple and pumpkin pie." "What?" Tanya hooted. "Duck apple? How old are you?" Aisha fell silent. She looked at the ground. "We ought to be all right here." Tanya looked around the street in which they found themselves. The houses were tall and old and had once been very smart. "They look like they've got a few quid." She pointed. "Take that one, for instance." The other girls turned to see. The house she pointed out lay directly opposite them. It was large and bleak and grey. It seemed to be all angles and unusual shapes, with a pointed tower right at the top that might have been an attic room. The garden in front was overgrown, and the iron gate was rusted. "I dunno," Carrie said. "If they was rich, they'd have done something to the place." "It looks weird." Aisha looked at the house a little nervously. "I think I'd like to go home now." "What's up?" Tanya grinned. "You frightened or something? What do you think's in there? Vampires? Witches?" "Course not," Aisha said quickly. "Maybe we should go home." Carrie took a step closer to Aisha. "I mean, well, it's starting to rain. We don't want to get wet, do we?" Tanya's face wore a malicious smirk that was an excellent match for her hat. "You are scared, aren't you?" "I'm not," Carrie insisted. "That case." Tanya turned smugly back towards the old house. "Go over there. Ring the bell. Say trick or treat." She paused. "Dare you?" There was a long, awkward silence. "I suppose," Carrie said eventually, "we could. Just do a quick trick or treat, then home." "I don't think—" Aisha started. She saw the expression on Tanya's face and stopped in mid-sentence. "There you go, then." Tanya quickly handed supplies over. "Few eggs left, and there's plenty of streamers for the letterbox, if you don't get an answer." The other girls took the items hesitantly. Tanya hung on to the last spray can. "I'll take this. Do the houses at the back. Meet you back here in, say, 10 minutes. Then we can go home." She headed off. "And make sure you do it. I'll be checking on you." With that, the tip of her pointed hat disappeared into the darkness. Slowly, Carrie and Aisha exchanged glances. Then they began to cross the street. "Jackpot!" Tanya yelled. She came dashing back. "I found the rich ones. They were giving me anything just to get rid of me. £19. She stopped. She looked at her watch. She was bang on time. 10 minutes. She was standing in the exact same spot where they'd arranged to meet. But there was no sign of Carrie or Aisha. She frowned. That wasn't like Carrie. She always arrived early for everything, even school. Tanya had teased her about it. Tanya pulled out her phone, dialed Carrie's number. "Hi, this is Carrie's phone. I can't talk to you right now." Sharply, Tanya pressed the screen to end the call. She brushed a drop of rain from the end of her nose. Aisha had been right. Any moment now it was going to pour down. Where were the others? Quickly, Tanya crossed the street. She stood at the rusty gate for a moment, looking at the house beyond. She stared. The bay windows and the glass panels in the front door were covered in egg. Carrie and Aisha certainly had been there. Tanya blinked as a light drizzle of rain began to fall. The next moment, the whole of the big black cloud above seemed to empty itself on her. "Oh no!" Tanya howled. Within seconds, she was wet through. Unlike the other girls, she didn't have a coat on under her costume, and the cheap black cape around her shoulders soaked up water like a sponge. Home was 10 minutes away, even if she ran. She looked around desperately for shelter. There was none. There was only one thing for it. Tanya stood before the egg-stained door and pressed the iron bell push beside. A bell rang distantly. There was silence, broken only by the continued rushing of rain. Tanya turned, wet and miserable, to look at the untidy and waterlogged garden. It had been ages since anyone had mown the scrappy bit of lawn, or pruned the tangle of bushes that surrounded it. At the edge of the lawn was an ancient cucumber frame, empty, its glass dirty and cracked. Up against it stood a pair of old-fashioned garden brooms. Tanya agreed with Carrie. If whoever lived here had money, they certainly weren't spending it on the house or garden. Where were Carrie and Aisha? "Excuse me." A hand tapped Tanya on the shoulder. Tanya gave a yell and spun round. She stopped. The front door was open, and standing there, smiling pleasantly, was an old lady. "Great heavens, you're wet through." The old lady's face creased in a worried frown. Tanya paused. The old lady was tall and wore a black dress and had silvery hair tied back in a tight bun. She looked kind enough, but there was something strange about her. Tanya took a breath. "I was looking for my friends, 2 girls. "Oh, you can't stay out on a night like this." The old lady took a step forward. "Come in. You'll catch your death." "It's a horrible night." The old lady closed the front door. "I pity anyone who has to fly." She caught Tanya's eye. "We're quite close to the airport, you know." She removed Tanya's hat and cloak. "You must get these wet things off." "Oh, what a lovely hat." Carefully, the old lady hung Tanya's costume across a coat stand. Tanya caught sight of the letterbox. Streamers hung stickily from it, cascading down to the welcome mat at the base of the front door. "I was looking for my friends," she repeated, rather loudly. "A girl called Carrie and a girl called Aisha." I'm afraid there's been no one here. The old lady opened a door to a large room where Tanya could see a log fire burning. Come in, get yourself warm. Tanya hesitated. Come on, the old lady insisted. Then you can tell me all about it. She headed off into the room. After another pause, Tanya followed. She found herself in a drawing room that had once been very grand. Now the old upholstered chairs were battered and worn. The leather books upon their shelves were thick with dust. Various strange-looking plants stood in pots. Most looked unhealthy, and one or two were definitely dead. There were other strange items too. A row of multicoloured bottles that stood upon the mantelpiece, an ancient wooden chest, a collection of straw dolls with faces that seemed to leer at Tanya. And there was a strange smell, fish-like, like distant kippers. Sit yourself down, the old lady ushered Tanya to the chair nearest the fire. You young people, you won't look after yourselves. Fancy going out on a night like this without a coat. She sat in the chair opposite Tanya, fixing her with a searching gaze. Tanya found herself looking straight into the old lady's eyes. It was very hard to look away. So, the old lady cleared her throat. What brings you here, you and your friends? Oh, we were trick-or-treat. Tanya paused. We were collecting for charity. That's very worthy. The old lady nodded. Tanya flinched. Something furry was brushing itself around her ankles. She looked down to see a black cat experimenting upon her legs. Oh, don't worry about her, the old lady smiled. She's ever so friendly. Now, wouldn't you like a hot drink or something? No, thank you, said Tanya. She brushed a damp lock of hair back from her face. I really want to find out what's happened to my friends. She took out her phone. That's weird. There's no signal in here. Oh, we detest those things. Tanya jumped. She turned to the door. Another old lady had entered, and she looked exactly like the first, tall and silvery and wrinkled and dressed in black. Don't even have the ordinary kind, the second old lady went on, or television. Actually, I always thought communication with the outside world was rather overrated. This young lady is looking for her friends, the first old lady said. I explained there's been no one here all night. She turned back to Tanya. By the way, this is Miss Besom, and I am Miss Besom. She paused. We're sisters, you know. She smiled. She addressed the new arrival. I suppose supper must be nearly ready, dear. Now I've finally got the oven lit, the second Miss Besom said. It's very tiresome. She paused. Do you think there'll be enough meat on the two of them? For us both? Oh, yes. The first Miss Besom smiled reassuringly. She turned back to Tanya. It's so difficult nowadays, don't you find, to get really good lamb chops? It's stuffy in here, the second Miss Besom sniffed. There's an unfamiliar smell. Try another one of those incense things, the first Miss Besom said. The second Miss Besom went to an open wooden box that stood next to the fire. She picked out a paper packet that Tanya saw contained a soft pink powder. Violently, the second Miss Besom lifted the packet up and hurled it into the flames. There was a small explosion, and a sweet, sickly smell began to spread throughout the room. Tanya coughed and spluttered. That's better. The first Miss Besom leaned back comfortably in her chair. We must have something nice to breathe, mustn't we? It really is a horrid night out there, the second Miss Besom said with grim satisfaction, as she listened to the rain. She looked smilingly at Tanya. I do hope those friends of yours have come to no harm. They seemed such nice girls. What? Tanya blinked. She shook her head dazedly. That stuff on the fire had filled the whole room now and was making her feel really weird, kind of sick. The room seemed to be going round and round and round. She struggled to focus on the second Miss Besom. I thought you said no one had been here. She staggered to her feet. Do you think I could use your toilet? Of course, dear, the first Miss Besom said. I'm afraid it's right at the top of the house, though. You'll have to go up both flights of stairs. Tanya held tightly onto the banister rail. The flight of stairs up from the hall was long and steep, and she was feeling so tired. Outside the house, she could hear the rain lashing down, and a strong wind was blowing. The further up she went, the darker it seemed to be getting. There was a deafening crash. Tanya yelled as a gust of wind and a blast of rain hit her across the face. Is it that window again? The second Miss Besom bellowed from downstairs. You have to press the catch right down, otherwise it just blows open. Tanya spluttered. She struggled to close the window. She staggered on. The second flight of steps was even steeper than the first, and she had a curious feeling of having left real life behind, far, far below. On the top floor, she could really hear the wind howling. It was pitch black. She couldn't see a thing. A long way below, Miss Besom, or was it Miss Besom, was shouting further instructions, but Tanya could no longer hear them. There must be a light somewhere. Where was the switch? She felt around the walls. They felt rough and damp and had a strange clamminess about them. Flinched. She had backed into something tall and wooden. It felt like a cupboard. 2 cupboards? She moved away. Suddenly she remembered the flashlight on her phone. She reached into her pocket and found it. She swiveled the phone around like a torch, looking in vain for a light switch. The room she was in, second floor landing, was bare and dusty and empty. But there was something here. She had backed into it. Where had she been standing? She turned the phone to her left. Then she froze. Standing against the far wall were the cupboard-like objects she had bumped into. But they weren't cupboards. They had 8 sides and hinged lids, and gleamed in polished oak. Coffins. 2 of them. Tanya jumped. Suddenly, her phone was ringing. She looked at the screen. It said, "Carrie calling." Tanya's hand trembled. She knew she should answer the phone, but her fingers wouldn't move. She took a wobbly step closer to the coffins. Tanya's eyes were wide, frozen in horror, because she knew what she had to do. Slowly, unable to help herself, she held the phone high, reaching out with her other hand towards the coffin lids. They weren't sealed. She could see she would be able to open them, just as if they were cupboards. The wind outside grew stronger, and the phone was ringing louder, and sweat was pouring down Tanya's brow. All at once, she flung the coffin lids open, first one, then the other, and she screamed. 2 small skeletons grinned back at her. A switch clicked. Tanya blinked as the landing was filled with sudden, blinding light. She spun round. The Mrs. Besom stood there, smiling. "Do you like the coffins?" the first Miss Besom asked. "They'll be ours one day. We bought them years ago. It's as well to order these things well in advance." She walked over to the coffins, indicated the skeletons. And these were father's. They're plastic. He was a doctor, you know. You mean... Tanya gulped. Oh, the second Miss Besom pointed downward. You'd better get back downstairs. The two other young ladies are outside in the street. If ladies is the word. They're looking for you. They've been here once already. You... Tanya was still shaking. You tricked me. You let me think... Did we scare you? The second Miss Besom asked. Scare me? Tanya shrieked. I've never been so scared in... Shall I tell you what scared is? The first Miss Besom suddenly sounded sharp. Scared is being elderly and living on your own, with no one else to look after you. Scared is being a prisoner in your own home every October 31st, while little hoodlums like you roam the streets, throwing eggs at houses or putting streamers through letterboxes. Scared is using an ancient festival of evil to cause havoc and terror and fear to innocent God-fearing people. She smiled. We just wanted you to know what it felt like. She pointed towards the stairs. Now get out. Where have you been? Demanded Carrie outside the gate. I was trying to ring you. Been looking for you everywhere. She stirred as Tanya rejoined them in the street. Tanya no longer had her hat or cloak and was looking pale and thoughtful. She seemed oddly quiet. Did you see those two old ladies? Aisha asked. We didn't do any good there. We did the dare, but then we had to go back looking for you. It was so embarrassing. Coming home now, then? Carrie asked. Yes, Tanya said. Yes. Let's go home. They moved off down the street. Rain stopped anyway, Carrie said. Are we doing anything for bonfire night? Tanya swallowed. I think I might just stay in. Quickly, she broke out of her trance. She smirked at the girls. Course, it's all just kids' stuff. Witches, magic, it's all made up. I'm not like you two. I'd never be really scared. She stopped. Aisha was staring at her. What's up with you? Tanya. Aisha spoke very, very slowly. What's that growing out of your face?